on the 1st of April 2026, the ground shook at Kennedy Space Center in Florida, United States. And guess what? A rocket of the height of 30-story buildings lit up the evening skies and rose slowly at first, carrying 4 human beings into the cosmos. Their mission was simple, and that was a visit to the moon. And on the 10th of April 2026, just some few hours, some few days ago, those same 4 people came home, splashing into the Pacific Ocean off the coast of San Diego, safe, triumphant, and historic. In between those 10 days, humanity did something it had not done over half a century. Man went back to the moon. I'm here to share with you the full story of this mission, which scientists and NASA call it Artemis II, and why this moment will be talked about for generations to come. Now, to understand Artemis II, we have to understand why humanity stopped going back to the moon in the first place and what changed. So, after the Soviet Union launched a small metal piece called Sputnik, which was about the size of a beach ball, into the orbit above the Earth on 4th of April 1957, and then again sending the first man called Yuri Gagarin into the space and returning him safely, the United States felt they've been beaten. Not once, but twice by the Soviet Union. At this point, the United States felt what will happen in future could be dangerous. The Soviet Union continued to develop in the space while the United States sits aloof watching. So promptly, on May 25, 1961, President John F. Kennedy, the then President of the United States, stood before the United States Congress and made one of the boldest promises any leader has ever made in peacetime. America will land a man on the moon and return him safely to the Earth. As a result, scientists and astronauts in the United States began on this mission to ensure this promise becomes a reality. So fast forward, on January 27th, 1967, NASA decided to name these missions Apollo, the god of the sun and the light, as known in Greek and Roman mythology. The crew of Apollo 1 was 3 of the finest astronauts NASA had ever produced: Gus Garrison, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee. But as the crew conducted their simulation, a flash fire broke out inside the capsule. Oxygen atmosphere NASA was using at the time. The fire, unfortunately, spread with terrifying speed and killed all the 3 astronauts. This major setback and this devastating story could have ended the dream of the visit to the moon, but these scientists took the death of these 3 men as a sacrifice to get their mission done. So several attempts were made from Apollo 1 up to Apollo 17, but in between, after several hard work behind the scenes, this time, NASA and astronauts achieved a significant milestone, and that was the mission Apollo 11 in July 20th, 1969, when Neil Armstrong stepped onto the lunar surface, becoming the first man to walk on the moon and a different planet. But before the last Apollo mission, which was Apollo 17, was the Apollo 13 mission, one of the famous space missions in history. Not because it succeeded landing on the moon, but because of how close it came to disaster and how the crew made it back alive. This was 11th April 1970. The Apollo 13 is one of the most dramatic and inspiring missions in the history of the space exploration, and the goal was to land astronauts on the moon. Jim Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Hayes were the crew members. About 2 days after the launch, a catastrophic explosion occurred in the spacecraft oxygen tank, and the famous message that was sent was, "Houston, we have a problem." Engineers did everything humanly possible to make sure the crew members returned to Earth alive. Although it failed to land on the moon, it is remembered as one of NASA's greatest rescue missions. So simply, Apollo 13 turned a near-fatal disaster into one of the greatest survival stories in space history. The last one was the Apollo 17, which was launched on 7th December 1972 and landed on the moon on 11th December 1972 with 3 crew members. Apollo 17 was special because it was the longest stay on the moon, about 3 days on the surface. And since 1972 until the 1st of April this year, where Artemis program was launched, no humans have returned to the moon. For 50 years, the moon waited, but the reasons for going back are far more compelling now than they were during the Apollo missions. Scientists have discovered water ice on the lunar surface, and after all these long waits, NASA decided to visit the moon again, but this time not with an Apollo mission, but a different mission called the Artemis. The Artemis program is NASA's multi-decade mission to return humans to the moon for the first time since 1972, establish a long-term base there, and eventually enable future human missions to Mars. This named after Apollo's twin sister in Greek Roman mythology as well, the goddess of the moon. Artemis was designed to do what Apollo never did, not just a visit, but to stay. But here is the thing: before you can send humans to the moon, you need two things above all else: a rocket powerful enough to get them there, and a spacecraft capable of keeping them alive on the journey. NASA spent years building both, and any launch attempt in February 2026 was postponed after a liquid hydrogen leak was detected during a simulated countdown. A second attempt in early March was cancelled as well when engineers once again discovered a helium flow issue in the rocket's upper stage, triggering a full rollback to the vehicle assembly point. They fixed it, they tried again, and on 1st April 2026, they got it right. The Artemis II crew members consist of Commander Reid Wiseman, pilot Victor Glover, and mission specialist, who is the only female among them, Christiana Koch, all from NASA, along with the Canadian Space Agency mission specialist, Jeremy Hansen. Each of them carried the weight of history on their shoulders, and each of them broke a barrier that had never been broken before. Victor Glover became the first black astronaut to venture beyond low Earth orbit. Christiana Koch became the first woman to travel to the vicinity of the moon. Amazing. And Jeremy Hansen became the first non-American to make the lunar journey. The members of this crew was selected way back in April 2023, allowing them to have time to spend 3 years training together before the mission. They trained in the geological environment in Iceland and to prepare for the lunar surface observations. They rehearsed emergency procedures hundreds of times, and they learned to live together as a team. For 3 days, the crew traveled through the darkness of the space, eating, sleeping, exercising, and conducting experiments along the line. And through the windows, they took very beautiful photographs. And according to them, this Earth we are living on kept growing smaller and more fragile, looking with every passing hour. Now, on day 6 of the mission, the crew officially traveled farther from the Earth than any crew missions in history, surpassing the record set by Apollo 13 in 1970. A record that has stood for 56 good years was broken. The spacecraft passed within 4,070 miles of the lunar surface and reached the maximum distance of approximately 252,760 miles from the Earth, about 4,105 miles further than the Apollo 13. And that was incredible, absolutely incredible. The crew made a flyby around the moon and once again took incredible photos, made observations, and saw things, including areas of the far side of the moon that no human has ever directly seen before. After this incredible adventure, memories, and a lot of discoveries by the crew members, the day 7 was the time to pack and come back to the Earth, heading back towards the planet they had left 10 days earlier. After running their final checks, making sure their parachute and everything is working to perfection, the Earth was ready to welcome the crew. On 10th April 2026, after a total journey of 694,481 miles, 4 astronauts are back home. Every single one of them home and safe. Incredible. According to NASA, the mission Artemis II is not the destination, but it is the proving ground. So what it means is that Artemis II just looked around the moon and came back. It did not touch the surface at all. But guess what? NASA is planning to go back through the Artemis III program, where they are aiming at landing astronauts on the moon and get to the point where they are convinced that there is a second home for humanity, and that is the life on the moon. The next chapter of human exploration is not a dream. It is a reality. It is already underway. Man is going back to the moon, and this time, man is going to stay. So keep trying. After their first attempt, which took the life of 3 most experienced scientists at that time, NASA did not give up. There they are, making history for themselves, writing stories, and breaking barriers no one has even thought before. So in your own corner, keep trying that. Keep working on what you're doing. Without failure, there wouldn't be any success. And no matter how many times you fail, one success seals all your failures. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to drop your comment, share it, subscribe to the channel. Until I see you again, take good care of yourself.